What's going on, everybody?
You can do other things and you can explore different aspects of yourself and you can become a different person.
You can't use your voice, lift someone else's voice up.
Understand that you are a global citizen and you do have a responsibility.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Life Outside the Box podcast. I'm Abigail Kurnia.
And I'm Asante Houghton.
And we're joined today by the incredibly inspirational Ryan Straschnitzki. Ryan, thank you for speaking with us.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Today, we're talking about Ryan's mental health journey as a survivor of the Humboldt bus accident, finding strength in his advocacy towards accessible and adaptive sports. It's a great conversation. Tune in, don't miss it. And as always, I want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Cameco. Why don't we just jump right into it? Ryan, why don't you tell us, well, first of all, hi, how are you? Thanks for joining. And then, what's your story, Ryan? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. I grew up playing hockey at the age of 4 and truthfully did not like hockey at all to begin with. So until I got to a higher competitive level, maybe around like 9 or 10, I started enjoying it more. I started to go on, more trips with friends and teammates and just create memories that last forever, create friendships that last forever. And as I went up the ranks at about 16, I moved away from home to play hockey in Edmonton, which is about 2.5, 3 hours north of where Calgary is. And since then, I was on the pursuit to play pro hockey, and that was my goal. So from there, I decided, I want to play junior hockey. So I started off my career in what's called the Alberta Junior A Hockey League for the Whitecourt Wolverines. After 3 games, I got traded to Saskatchewan to play for the Humboldt Broncos. And back in 2017-2018 season, our team collided with a semi-truck, leaving me paralyzed from the T1 vertebrae down. And so since that journey of being in the hospital and being told I'd never walk again, I kind of wanted to prove doctors wrong and to prove to myself that no matter the situation that I'm in, I'm more than capable of achieving my goals. So from that time, I decided to get into rehabilitation to regain the hope of maybe walking again someday, as well as playing adaptive sports. I think they taught me so much that I decided, I gotta stay involved. So I got into sled hockey, got into golf, got into basketball, rugby, like you name it, I've probably tried it. So there's so many avenues that I want to take and continue to be an advocate for accessibility needs for those living with both mental and physical disabilities. So along this journey, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. There's going to be a lot of learning curves, but I'm excited and willing to see where the future is going to take me if I do the right things.
Wow, that's so amazing. Not amazing that the accident happened, but just your resolve in continuing and making something, continuing to have joy in your life. So admirable. I know we're just getting to know each other, but like super proud of you for all that. So man. Let's maybe hop right into it because the burning question that everyone's going to ask is what was it like that day when the accident happened? Could you maybe just bring us through that day, even before the accident, kind of like what was happening then, what happened?
Yeah, so it was playoff hockey. We were going into game 5. We're down 3-1 in the series, so if the opposing team won the game, we would have packed our bags and headed home for the summer. So it was just like any other game day, right? You get up early, you go to the rink for morning skate, do your thing, go out for breakfast with your teammates, go back to the rink later, pack your bags, load the bus, and you're off. And when you're about 20 to 30 minutes outside of the opposing team city, you throw on your dress clothes, put in your headphones, do whatever it is that you do to focus, and everything's sort of quiet. And then I remember hearing a distinct scream from the front of the bus. I poked my head down the aisle. Bus driver had both his hands on the wheels and he's looking to his right. And within an instant, I look to my right and I see a semi truck coming our way. And, just like that, everything's sort of black. And I remember sort of waking up, shaking my head and trying to get up, right? My first instinct was just get up, right? And I go to move and I'm stuck. I go to move again, still stuck and thinking something's holding me down. And I look down and there's nothing on top of my legs. It's just my legs out in front of me and I can't move them. So instantly I know something's wrong. I remember my next instinct was just to yell for help. And with the injuries that I sustained to my lungs, my ribs, and my head, I wasn't able to do that either. So I was in and out of consciousness, and wasn't sure if these were going to be my last moments, right? So I'm sort of stuck in this environment of guessing. The level of uncertainty is stressful. You have so many things going on that you can't wrap your head around something or anything, and you're kind of going through this state of delirium where you don't know what's real, what isn't. And fortunately enough, a bystander waited with me until the paramedics arrived, where I got loaded up into an ambulance and taken to the nearest hospital just outside of Nipawin, which was the team we were playing in Saskatchewan. And from there, I remember waking up to a nurse standing over me saying, like, "Sir, don't move. We think you sustained an injury to your back. We're going to have to airlift you to the University of Saskatchewan Hospital and kind of get you through scans, assess the damage, and see what we can do." So from that point, I got I got loaded up into the STARS ambulance hospital helicopter. From there, taken to the University of Saskatchewan Hospital, placed in an emergency room where I was told I will have spinal cord surgery the following day. I remember, at 18 years old, I'm sort of, I don't really know the process of this all. I think, the doctors are going to fix me. And I'm pretty sure that the surgery itself was anywhere from 9 to 12 hours. I remember waking up in an emergency room, still not being able to move anything, being in an immense amount of pain, like internally, externally, all the above. And just remember seeing friends, families, visitors coming in, giving me words of encouragement. And, the doctors came in and told me that I had a less than 2% chance of walking again. And from that point is really when the journey started. But that was, I accumulate that all into one day because it was in the span of probably 24 to 36 hours.
I feel like I'm definitely just playing a broken record here, but I can't imagine what it must have felt like to go through that. And I kind of want to touch a little bit on, I mean, even from the brief moments we've been speaking now and even beforehand, you seem like a very optimistic person. You're always looking on the bright side. Can you touch a little bit on how you find strength, or how you were able to even begin the process of finding strength in the face of unimaginable pain and loss?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think you're not going to be like fully able to be super optimistic without thinking about the past. I think there's a way to, how they say, fake it till you make it almost. There's definitely times where I have to fake it so much that I start to believe it. There are hard times where I'm like, today I don't feel like doing anything, or today something's holding me back. And, all these excuses are sort of floating around. But to me, it's like, what, you just have to like do what you said you were going to do, right? Whatever you told yourself, getting into sport, getting into rehab, at least make an attempt to do something 1% in that direction. And whether that's, going outside or like getting in the car, at least just the minute details every day that at least get you one step closer to reaching that goal. And so a lot of that was like putting on a smile when people look to you for, inspiration or whatever the case is. And, just doing your best to, like I said, fake it till you make it. Right. And once you start doing that, even though you might not feel like it, you start to believe it, and you essentially keep building in incremental steps toward your goals and your dreams.
Yeah, with everything that you're describing, I keep thinking, what is your mindset, to keep going at, doctors say 2% chance of walking again. And your response is, well, I'm going to walk, So like, and, then you describe, having those moments where you're like, maybe you don't feel like doing the thing that you committed to doing. So what is your mindset in terms of staying motivated to push forward? And where do you think that comes from?
I think growing up, my parents probably attest to this, that I was a pretty stubborn kid, pretty determined as well. So when someone told me not to do something, I think it's our human inclination to actually want to do it more. So my whole life I've been cut from hockey teams. I've been, told I was like in school, like wasn't smart in certain subjects, and all these things that people tell you, and deep down personally, like this sort of innate feeling where I'm like, what, I'm going to prove you wrong, right? And you do whatever you can. You start working, you start revolving your life around those aspects where people told you couldn't do something. So I think that carried on. I built that up as part of my identity growing up. Again, moving away from home at 16, having to deal with things on my own, problems on my own, where I didn't have that sort of parental role and supervision, really, where I was, having to take care of myself and learn a lot of these things that young adults do. And so a lot of that was sort of built up and part of the maturing process. So I was fortunate enough to have matured at a young age. And I think that kind of set me up, set the precedence for being determined and stubborn and whatever you want to call it after the accident.
I know you did. You worked with Adidas in the past, is that right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Sorry.
that's an incredible. I mean, to work with a brand like Adidas, that's amazing. Can you touch a little bit on just like what that was like?
Yeah, so right after the accident, I believe this maybe the summer of 2018, maybe. Adidas, actually one of the workers that worked for Adidas, DM me on Instagram, and at first I thought it was a joke. I thought he was not just a spam or whatever. And so, I was like, yeah, I'll play along with it. So I messaged him back and they're like, all right, we'll set up a call. Da, 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 da. And within like 2 weeks, we set up a call, signed the 4-year contract, and got flown up to Toronto for my first commercial shoot. And so that was pretty cool. And having them on my side to help essentially build a platform for myself and promote adaptive sports and mainly sled hockey was incredible. I mean, they helped basically fund all my wardrobe right now and shoes. And if you ever need shoes, hit me up. I mean, I don't get to wear half of them, but anyways, yeah, they sponsored me throughout the entire past 4 years of sport, and we're hoping to continue that relationship and continue to help build that platform and hopefully represent them well at hopefully a Paralympic stage at some point. So they've been fantastic, and it's something I would have never had the opportunity had I been continuing to play hockey if the accident never happened.
What was it like to receive that DM? Like, to bring us a little bit more into that. You're like, what was happening that day when you received the DM?
So I was at physio in Calgary, and I remember just kind of stretching and looking at my phone, looking at the DM from this person who said they worked for Adidas, right? So I thought it was a joke. Like I thought my buddies were setting me up or something, or it was a spam or whatever. So I just replied and said, yeah, like I'm interested. Like, and she replied back and, got a call and a meeting set up with the head guy of Adidas Canada. And from there, we built a relationship. We've had a lot of connections and we sort of diverted branches as well. So, yes, I'm represented by Adidas Canada, but I've got to do work with Adidas Golf, Adidas like North America, like just this sort of expanding the brand, sharing my story and allowing myself to be put in those situations where I'm representing Adidas at various levels and allowing people to see that and also maybe take inspiration from that and allow themselves to obviously look at the brand in a different perspective in a good way and allow themselves to see what's out there for adaptive sports, because a lot of people have no knowledge on some of the adaptive sports available to them.
Has working with Adidas in any way helped shape your foundation and your charity foundation? Can you touch a little bit on what that is?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the charity foundation real quick, and then I'll talk about the correlation there. So the charity foundation is called the Straschnitzki Foundation. It was started essentially about a year and a half ago when I really started putting work into it. And the reason being is throughout my process of going to rehab to walk again or going to try adaptive sport to make the Paralympics, I met a lot of people along the way, athletes and people going through the process as well. And a lot of the barriers that they kept hitting were the financial barriers of not being sustainable or not being able to put their kid into adaptive sport or stopping rehab because the sessions got too expensive. And with that in mind, I was like, how can I help? And doing some research, I thought, well, a charity foundation would be the best way to provide funds and to help with rehabilitation and adaptive sport needs. So I started the Straschnitzki Foundation. We've raised funds. We're trying to give back to the community. We're trying to build that reputation first, continuing to bring in funds and dispersing it back into the community. We just finished our first ever charity golf tournament actually back in August, and Adidas Golf was actually one of our main sponsors. So they provided a lot of prizes and gift bags for people, and they really helped raise awareness for the charity. And we're just going to continue raising that awareness, hopefully raising more funds and just giving as much as we can back to the community.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Giving back clearly means a lot to you. What part of usually when folks are very motivated to give back, there's a connection there. Maybe it might seem a little obvious, but what part of your story does that motivation to give back come from? I mean, obviously, the accident, but there seems to be something inside of you. I mean, you seem like a very nice guy. So super dope dude. So where does that come from? Like, was it your parents? Was it like how you grew up? Like, where did that
Yeah,
come
I think a lot of that, a lot of that is how I grew up, and being a hockey player and as an athlete, I think you get to see these high level pro athletes, regardless of what sport they're in, give back to the community always, and just the smile on their faces. Like, I think deep down, we all love bringing happiness to people. We love making people smile. We like making them laugh and making them feel as though they're included. And a lot of those things, I mean, even growing up, sometimes I didn't feel included or wanted, and that kind of stuck with me, right? And growing up, I was like, I don't want kids or whoever to experience that feeling because it sucks. So, I think giving back, obviously, it provides them support and the happiness to feel included and enjoy whatever it is that they want to do and reach their goals. So, but deep down, you get filled with a sense of gratitude and the power to actually want to continue doing it. So, it goes both ways, and I think it's just one of those things where it feels good, and you want to provide access to all those great feelings for people wanting to reach their goals and dreams as well.
Amazing. I'm gonna kind of switch gears a little bit here. I've noticed in the past, not necessarily sold to hockey culture, but in sports culture in general, there's been a massive shift between around the talk of mental health and how that correlates with physical health and just how interconnected they are. Can you touch a little bit on your experience, your perspective on that, and if how taking care of your mental health can improve gameplay as well?
Definitely. Mental health, as a kid growing up as a hockey player, essentially there was a stigma around it, right? If you talk about it, if you're emotional, you're weak. And up until the point of essentially the accident, even a couple of years after, before the pandemic, I didn't really think anything of it. I'm all for people taking care of themselves, but for me, I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Then the pandemic hit and everything shut down, and I had nothing to do. And that's when I was like really alone and sitting with my thoughts, and right, thoughts ruminate and they can get the best of you. And I'm like, how do I deal with this? Right. They're just going to stick here. I have no outlet. I don't know what to do with it. And that's when I really started diving into the idea of like, okay, I got to start doing something mentally, right? Keep my mind busy. Before I was in front of cameras all the time. I was traveling, I was training, I was doing physio, like just all the above. So I was so busy, I didn't have time to think or really think about my thoughts. And so when the pandemic hit, everything was quiet. Now I had time, and I'm like, okay, this is really eating away at me. I'm sitting around watching Netflix. I work out for an hour, and then I got 23 hours to do whatever, right? And it just started to build up. So one of the first things I had to do was reach out to someone, and that was one of the hardest things ever, was that first step. And there's actually a teammate of mine who I played with in Humboldt and in Edmonton. His name's Tyler Smith. He just won Amazing Race Canada with his girlfriend, and he is one of the biggest proponents of mental health. And he has his brand, Not Alone, and I think what he's doing is incredible. And he's a huge component as to helping me sort of get there. Right, he was the guy I looked to reach out to someone and start talking, and he's been a huge support. So he's one of the best guys I know that are diving into the mental health side of things, and I'm a huge advocate for it as well. But I think he's taken it in a new direction to allow people and on this platform to really take care of it. And I'm a huge proponent again of wanting to take care of your mental health. I wish I knew more about the subject itself. I've just known what I've done personally to take care of it. But he's a guy that wants to promote it and allow people access to take care of their mental health on a bigger scale. So yeah, if you guys ever need a guest, I'm sure he would love to do it. But I guess going back to the personal story of mental health, taking that first step was the hardest, but from there it was learning outlets and sort of dealing with the crappy side of things. It was journaling, it was getting into music, it was reading books, it was all these things that, right, as a hockey player, you're like, I don't need that, right? That's stupid. So anyways, I started doing it. Started slow, took it day by day, but as I've built up this habitual process of having outlets. I think I've grown to be a different person, and I'm way happier with the person I am now versus who I was when the pandemic started. So it's a continual evolution, and I don't think it'll ever stop, but there are ways to mitigate the problems, and those are the outlets that I sort of found throughout the way.
Amazing. Yeah, we're gonna have to call Tyler too. But anyway, yeah, I'm when you describe like hockey player self before your mental health journey, so to speak, and then you're at a place now where you're like, oh, this is really cool, I'm engaged. So like, how has your identity, like how has Ryan, how you look at yourself in the mirror, how has that changed now that you're like committed to the mental health part of your journey?
Yeah, I think when I was 18 and growing up, I had tunnel vision, right? I had one goal in mind. School didn't really matter to me. It was all hockey. It was like having fun, just enjoying it, just being a regular teenager, right? But now that I've experienced sort of the real world a little bit, and I mean I have a long way to go, but from what I've experienced so far is that your horizon, your prospective vision gets so widened that it really immerses you in different fields, and it's like life sort of tests you. It's like, are you ready for this side of things? And you go in unprepared and you end up falling behind, right? And so it's important to me personally to prepare yourself in as many fields as you can, so that if life does throw a curveball at you, you know how to proficiently handle it. And it's one of those things, again, that'll be a continual process, but I think if the more you can handle all the varieties of life that come your way, I think the better suited you are to be successful in the future.
And going back to, when you first realized, like, I need help, like, pandemic's here, the isolation, the feeling of loneliness, what would you say to someone who, I don't want to say like starting their mental health journey, because that sounds like the wrong wording, but someone who's going through what you went through? What would you say to them for like words of encouragement?
It's tough because if I was talking to myself, I know how I would talk to myself, and I know everyone's different. So if I was
Yeah.
talking to myself, I'd be like, you know what, this is gonna suck. This is gonna be a long process, but trust me, each day gets better. It's like riding a bike, right? The first day you do it, I remember my experience was like I'd fall over. I couldn't even get it on the first day. But as I continue to show up day after day, you slowly start building up momentum and you start getting better and more proficient. And you start doing all these tricks and jumps and whatnot. But it takes time, and it takes embracing the suck when it starts, right? It's learning to crawl before you walk, and walk before you run. So it is going to be a long process, and it's something that truthfully will never get solved completely. But there are ways to mitigate it, handle it, be aware of it, but not let it dwindle your success in the future, and not let it get in the way. So I would just tell people that it's going to be a long process, and that you should never stop working on it, because it's not just going to vanish one day, right? It's going to take hard work. It's going to take the effort required to mitigate those problems, but it will be worth it day after day, because your mental health matters. And I think whatever your mind says, your body follows. So your mind is one of the most important things that you need, and it's important to take care of it like you would anything else.
So what do you do on your bad days?
Yeah, the, the bad days, depending on what kind of bad day, right? Whether it's stress, or you feel like you have nothing to do, or you just kind of slept bad, or whatever it is, it's understanding what you're thinking. So a lot of the things and I'm still learning about it, is um the way you're thinking isn't a reflection of how you actually feel. And for example, if you're like down on yourself, you're like, oh, I'm falling behind, or right, you're sort of having this negative talk. It's not a reflection of how you feel. It's just your brain sort of giving you a heads up as to things you should focus more on. And I could have that totally backwards, but from what I've experienced is like, if your brain's thinking you're falling behind, it's like, okay, let's explore it a little more, right? It might suck, but let's explore that thought a little more. And it's like, okay, why do I feel like I'm falling behind? Well, you missed training. It's like, okay, but it's recovery. If I miss this one day of training, how can I make that up the next day? Or like, are there ways to solve problems? So really looking at it less from an emotional perspective, but more as a logical perspective, and allowing yourself to really embrace those thoughts, break it down, and get to the root of the problem. And once you start breaking that down, whether that's through journaling or thought or meditation, whatever that requires, I think is one step in the right direction to allow you to really break down those negative thoughts and see them for what they really are, and don't take it personally, right? Don't allow it to affect your next actions. So think about it first, and then respond correctly afterwards.
So what's next for you, Ryan? Do you have anything, like, what are your hopes with your foundation, your charity foundation, or even like personal goals, talking about mental health? If you're comfortable sharing, just what's next?
Yeah, I think from I guess a business and charity perspective, the charity, we want to continue to grow, raise that awareness, build the platform, bring as many people on board as we can to let them know that this is out there, that they can access this and not have to worry about any sort of roadblocks or burdens in their way of reaching their goals. And aside from that as well, starting a brand new business to bring universal accessibility, architecture, and consulting to the plate as well. I think when we think of accessibility, a lot of us think architecture or access to certain buildings or whatever the case. But a lot of accessibility is as well is the funds, right? A sled, for example, for sled hockey is like $1,000, and if a parent's already spent money on a renovated van or renovated house, right, there's not a lot of funds for that sports equipment. So little things like that, as far as accessibility, it's allowing people to not have financial burdens in the way of reaching their goals. So that's a business perspective, very new, still continuing to work on it, and we'll see where that goes. From a personal side of life, I guess, just continuing to try and get better. I think the pursuit of knowledge has really sparked something inside of me to allow myself to access all these different things within the world that exist that I had no idea about, right? I'm super into nonfiction. I might dive into fiction, who knows, right? Like just exploring different things out there and looking at avenues and being super open-minded and fluid with the way the world works and what's out there. Because I remember being closed-minded. It didn't help me. It didn't help the people around me. I think as being open-minded as possible was key to success and being able to communicate with people. Before I was only communicating with hockey players, athletes, and really closed-minded. But now that I've been a little more open-minded, I've been able to communicate with whoever about whatever subject and learn along the way. If I don't know something, I'm going to learn, right? And I ask questions, and it's an exciting process. I'm just going to continue to learn, to grow, and try to be remembered as at least a good person at the end of the day, right? And that's all you can do is try. So we'll see where that takes me, and just continue to grow and give back.
Wow, you were like, I hope my children can be like you. Like you're just like you're just doing so much good in the world, and you're balancing a lot. How do you manage all of the different things that you're doing in terms of, I mean, taking care of your body and, your personal goals, but also, the Adidas stuff and, the foundation and just all of the things that you're doing. How do you like manage it logistically in terms of like time management? But I also imagine there's some stress involved as well. So how do you manage that piece also?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I have a guy who I work with, kind of a business partner, someone who helped me with the foundation getting it started. He does a lot of communication, so that sort of delegates that process to him, which takes a lot off my shoulders. But on top of that, it's being as efficient as you can with the time that you have, whether that's getting up early to get an extra hour or two in just to get ready or get something done within a day is being as efficient as possible, and knowing what to prioritize and what not to. So for example, sleep, I'm sure, is a big one, right? We all go to bed late. I'm guilty of it as well. But knowing that you have to get up early the next day, right? It's important to try to at least time going to bed early and get enough sleep and get up early and be as effective as possible with the time allocated towards whatever it is that you're doing. So for sports, I know that I'm on a routine where it's 10 a.m. training or like a 7 p.m. practice. So within those time frames, I have time to do emails, or I have time to do journaling, right? And you sort of allocate as much time as you can to what's prioritized within your life. And I think that takes some self-thought, and I prioritize what I think are most important in my life. And obviously, work and business are great, but the relationships with friends, families, girlfriends, whoever, is up there as well. So it's important to kind of allocate your time most efficiently and effectively within a time frame. So give yourself as much time as possible, but also allow yourself to have just at least a day of rest a week. So, work your butt off, 5-6 days out of the week, and allow yourself, a day of just rest, no technology, just allow yourself to really reflect and just relax.
I want to go back for a second to the work you're doing and advocating for more accessibility in sports and removing those roadblocks from families. What has been the overall feedback from the work you're doing, and what's the most rewarding part of that? Because it's not something like widely spoken of, and I mean, even we've seen kind of an uptick in the conversation around accessible sports the past few years, but it's more or less a new thing in mainstream media. Just a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, a lot of people share this vision. So there's a lot of people, charities and not for profits out there that want to work towards a goal, but there becomes a separation when words get put to action, and a lot of us, this could relay back to certain individuals that might listen to the podcast where they say they're going to do something, or they say they want to do something and never actually put action to those words. So for us, that's the biggest difference. Is we know why we're doing it. We could tell the message 1,000 times a day, but unless we actually do something, we're not going to be effective. And I think with the charity tournament, for example, we actually did it. We went through with it. It was hard work. We weren't sure we were going to get it done, but we ended up overselling by the end, and having a really good turnout and positive messages our way, and just people wanting to come back next year. And regardless of how much we made, even if we didn't make a whole lot to give back, at least it plants the seed within people to know that, hey, Strath Strong, it puts action to words. Like they say that what they're going to do, and that could take time, but what we say we're going to do, we actually do it. So it's about staying true to your word, and allowing ourselves the opportunity to learn, to grow, to make mistakes, but again, at the end of the day, to at least put some action to those words. Yeah, that's pretty much all we can do. And like you said, there's been an uptick in awareness around the whole adaptive sport community and accessibility. So we're hoping to kind of join and collaborate as much as we can, learn. We're not here to compete with anyone. We're here to learn as much as we can, and help wherever we're kind of needed.
What's your, maybe this is like a little invasive, but hopefully it's not. Um, we're talking a lot about like the work Ryan. What about like personal life, Ryan? How is that going? Has that shifted since the accident? Just what is that part of Ryan like?
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think when I have time off, or I have the weekends off, I try to spend as much time as I can with friends or family, or girlfriend or whoever. And I guess in the last year and a half now, I went completely sober. So I guess right after the accident, I was, I wouldn't say I was abusive with alcohol and drugs, but definitely, had my share of it, I guess, and loved to party, and didn't think there would be any repercussions. And I kind of looked in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw. I thought there's more to me. The potentiality to be better is there, and that requires cutting certain things out of my life. And again, coming from that hockey background, I thought, it's normal. And like pro athletes do this all the time, right? And get away with this. And it affected my medical life, and relationships I had with people, and myself. So I saw no positive impact in my life. So about a year and a half ago, I completely cut it out of my life, and haven't looked back since. So from there, I'm just going to continue to grow, and learn from this, and realize that that's not the person I want to be, that there's always room for growth, no matter how good you think you are, or how good you think you have it. There can always be more if you decide to sacrifice, but also, again, just continue to grow on that personal development side.
That's really interesting. I mean, you're echoing a lot of we spoke to another pro athlete it would have been like over a year ago now. But you're echoing a lot of things, like statements and mindsets that I've heard in like the pro athlete community. Can you kind of touch on specifically in hockey culture, which is very like I would almost say there's um like a rhetoric that's more or less toxic. I don't know if I'm using the right word, but can you touch a little bit on the shift that we're seeing, and how important it is to have these conversations with your teammates and yourself, and make these positive changes that at the end of the day improve your gameplay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a culture around hockey that revolves partying and having fun, because it is a high stress environment, right? And some of the outlets that I guess people found that would mitigate the pain, whether that's stress, mental, physical, was through abusive relationships with alcohol and drugs. And there is sort of a predisposition when people think of hockey players, for example. They think, oh, like, outside of hockey, there's party animals, they just love whatever it is, right? And I think now, more recently than ever, I think we've started to realize that hockey players are starting to come out and talk about these stories, and sort of flip the switch, and change their lives around. And you see a lot of those on like TSN or ESPN or whatever the case. And I think that culture is slowly shifting towards seeking the help and the guidance. I mean, a lot of players, and obviously we don't know stories, a lot of players go through the development program within the NHLPA to deal with these problems and addictions and abusive relationships with whatever it is that they're going through. So I think there is a shift change. Again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's like taking care of your mental health. It's going to be a long process, but there are ways to mitigate the problem and allow yourself the best opportunity at success if you learn to cut out the things that are negating that progress.
As a hockey player and a young person, I think I used to be a young person. I'm older than I look. Um, Sometimes it's normalized in terms of, hey, this is just what we do, right? I'm not saying that. Well, I mean, maybe it was, but I'm not. How does one recognize when the alcohol and the drugs is too much?
I think when you start becoming reliant on it, it's tough to judge. I mean, it's all personal, but I think there are times when you start relying on it to cure a problem instead of dealing with the problem itself. And for me, a lot of that was just like sleep or being in that environment of like, you're with friends. How else are you gonna have a fun time, right? Put on a face, put on a mask, right? Let the alcohol inebriate you and put on a fake you or something like that, right? And I didn't like that. I wanted to again maybe test myself to see, can I handle being in social situations where everyone else around me might be dabbling with alcohol, and I could be sober and still be myself and still have a good time. So I would try things like that, and it was uncomfortable at first, but the more I did it, the better I got. So I started realizing that if you become reliant on something, you're never going to deal with it yourself. So it was important for me to um just kind of take a look in the mirror. Again, start doing processes of journaling and guitar and talking to people and learning ways to really find out what my real identity was and who I was and how strong and capable I was in the future. So just again, that personal development side of things, whatever it took, it was like learn to be happy with yourself and less reliant on the sources around you, and really internalize how you feel, look at it from a logical perspective, and do your best to work on them.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you kind of speak for the general shift in culture that we've seen. And I think it's a super important conversation to have, and I'm really glad that we're having it. And as we're kind of nearing the end of the episode, I always like to ask our guests, what's something that you wish you would tell your past self, and some advice that you would tell your past self, and then what's something you would tell your future self?
Something I would tell my past self is to it's tough. I mean, depending on how old I was, just to realize that there's more to life than what you think there is. I mean, it's not just school and hockey for the rest of your life. There's so many things out there. So don't be so close-minded. Be the best possible version of yourself, work on yourself, and just be a good person at the end of the day. That's all you can do, regardless of how you take that advice. Just be a good person to whoever you meet. Doesn't matter, strangers, kids that don't like you, whatever it is, just be nice, be a good person. And what I would tell my future self is, I guess, like, hopefully I've continued to do the right things and I've ended up successful, but regardless of the outcome, I'm happy with where I'm at. And all I can say is that we made it to this point in our lives that we can be content and happy with. But I know that there's always progress to be made, regardless of what stage of life you're at. So, hopefully my future self hears that and we're in a good position and take that advice to heart.
Super dope. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you'd like to, say? Like, is there a message you want to get out there? Anything like that?
Um, I'm not sure. I think one of the biggest messages, and I got told this at 13 from my dad, was when one door closes, another one opens. So there will be opportunities and things in life that get slammed in your face, and that opportunity disappears. But when that one closes, you got to sort of open your mind, be fluid, and realize that there's other opportunities out there. Maybe that's a 180 directional switch in your life, and but it'll end up being better in the long run. So regardless of what that open door is, it's never linear. It might close in your face in a split second. You might be hand on the door handle and it might close on you. So it's important to be open-minded, not be fixated on the past, and realize that the future has more to hold if you learn to work and find that open door.
Amazing. Thank you. I mean, Asante, do you have any other
No, I'm
questions?
just feeling really inspired personally. I'm just like, wow, I need to improve my discipline. But yeah, I'm Ryan, so amazing, man. What an inspiration, really. And for me, what I take from this is just like when you set your mind to something and then you show up, good things happen. And combined with the last thing you said, when you treat people well, you put all those things together and good things happen. You look like you're doing great. You're just like radiating. So it's super, super dope to see what just happened to my life. What was that about? Um, um, but yeah, it's super, super good to see.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything. Just thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I think this has been an absolute incredible conversation that we've had. I feel so lucky to be able to have been able to speak to you and know your journey, and it's crazy inspirational. And I mean, you just radiating, as Asante said, and the strength and courage it takes. Thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Last thing,
Yes.
how's the walking going?
It's good. It's a process. Like we continue to walk to keep the legs healthy. And I had some experimental surgery done in Thailand where it allows me to move muscles below my injury. So continue to using that device and hoping to get walking with less and less assistance over a long period of time. We're hoping one day, can walk again and start getting function back. So still a process, but we're seeing slow improvement.
Oh, you're gonna make it, man.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.